everyone, I'm Loie Bundy Sickle. I am the author of From an Idea to Disney. Everyone knows who Walt Disney is, right? He's the person who created Disney World and Disneyland and characters like Minnie and Mickey and Donald and Goofy. But not a lot of people talk about Walt Disney's failures until now. In my book, there are many failures that Walt Disney had to overcome. When he was a young boy, he loved to draw, and he loved animals, and he loved to make his friends laugh, and he dreamed of being a cartoonist. But his first cartoon company was called Laugh-O-Grams, and you've never heard of it because it failed. And this is what happened next. With only $40 in his pocket, Walt left for Hollywood, excited and optimistic. His brother Roy was already living in California, and Walt thought, I wanted Roy and I to be partners. That was all. I mean, we just wanted to be partners. I wanted it. The two brothers borrowed money from their parents, bought a new video camera, and opened the Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio in Hollywood in 1923. Together, Roy and Walt were a good team. Walt drew the cartoons while Roy managed the business. Early on, Walt and Roy met with a film distributor named Margaret Winkler. She presented them with a contract stating that she would pay the Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio for 12 films, $1,500 for each of the first 6 films, and $1,800 for each of the next 6 films. In addition, Margaret Winkler would receive the intellectual property rights to everything the Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio created. Although it wasn't a great deal, it was work, and Walt signed the contract. Soon thereafter, Walt and Roy Disney hired 2 women to help with the increased workload. Walt would draw the outlines of the cartoon characters, and the 2 women would fill in or ink them. Walt fell in love with one of these women, Lillian Bounds. On July 13, 1925, Walt and Lillian got married. In 1926, the Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio changed its name to Walt Disney Studios to reflect Walt's talent and vision. Walt Disney Studios had some success early on with one of their cartoon characters named Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Meanwhile, Margaret Winkler married a man named Charles Mintz who took over her business. Charles Mintz, however, had a sneaky plan up his sleeve. He wanted to get rid of Walt and Roy and take over Walt Disney Studios. Charles Mintz approached Walt with a second contract. It stated that Walt Disney Studios would produce 26 animated short cartoons featuring Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, but Charles Mintz would pay them only $1,500 for each film. This was even less money than the first contract, and again gave Charles Mintz the intellectual property rights to everything Walt Disney Studios created. But Walt needed the work. So he signed the contract and hired more artists and animators, including Walt's good friend, Ub Iwerks. With the new films, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit became very popular with children and adults. However, Charles Mintz's plan to take over Walt Disney Studios soon went into effect. First, Charles Mintz signed the new 3-year agreement with Universal Studios to create more Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoons. Then, without Walt and Roy knowing, Charles Mintz approached the artists and animators at Walt Disney Studios and hired them all away. All of them except Ub Iwerks. Charles Mintz now owned Oswald the Lucky Rabbit and employed most of Walt's employees. Walt was furious. He and Lillian took a train ride to New York City to try to negotiate a new deal, but Charles Mintz only offered Walt less money and now wanted full control of Walt Disney Studios. Walt refused the deal and walked away. Angry and frustrated, Walt and Lillian Disney headed back home on a train from Manhattan to Hollywood. It was then that an idea popped into Walt's head. Walt's idea was a cartoon mouse. Walt quickly sketched the mouse on a pad of paper. The mouse had round black ears, a white face, a big smile, and a long tail. Walt showed it to Lillian and announced the mouse's name. Mortimer Mouse. Mortimer Mouse? Lillian questioned. She did not like the sound of the name Mortimer. Several days later, Lillian suggested a different name. Lillian Disney suggested Mickey Mouse. Walt returned home and created the first 2 Mickey Mouse cartoons. Unfortunately, they flopped. No movie theater wanted to buy them. Walt knew he had to create something new and spectacular to save Mickey Mouse from being a failure. Walt had to add innovation to his work, so he did something that had never been done before. Walt added sound to a cartoon for the first time ever. On November 18, 1928, Walt Disney Studios released a cartoon called Steamboat Willie. It featured Mickey Mouse as the captain of a ship, whistling and singing along to synchronized music. Audiences were amazed. And I hope you enjoy Steamboat Willie.